You know, it's interesting. I've been sitting here for the past 30 seconds trying to think of some way to start this. I can't think of anything, so let's just dive right into the music. Meet Mallet by A Formal Horse. So, A Formal Horse is a brilliant kind of avant-garde heavy prog. I always feel like this would be what a synth dream pop outfit would sound like if they were more in a heavy metal, heavy rock style of expression. The singing styles that are from Francesca Lewis, and it might be Francesca, maybe Francesca, her dreamy dream pop vocal works are met with the bombastic approach from Russell Mann on bass, Benjamin Short on guitar, and Mike Stringfellow on drums are met with this bombastic, very brutal approach. This is the second full-length LP. They've been around since the mid-2010s, coming out with their self-titled EP in 2014, following it up the next year with Morning Jigsaw, and then Made in Chelsea in 2017. But it wasn't until their first full-length debut LP of Here It Comes a Man from the Council with a Flamethrower that really knocked me out. Like, this album was everything that I was looking for at that time. I didn't discover it until the first couple of months in 2020, so throughout all of last year, I was really devouring and digging this band and this album. Now we come into their sophomore album of Meet Mallet, and I feel like they took everything that they learned from their debut LP and all of the EPs that they had kind of constructed until then, and really polished it off, really synthesized, and really nurtured their musical expressions into what we have now with Meet Mallet. And they have exceeded all of my expectations, which the expectations were high to begin with. So the fact that they have exceeded everything really goes to show for something. I love how the album just completely opens up brilliantly with This One's Just a Warning. Looks like they've changed some things around. It's a good thing that I caught that. Otherwise, I would be saying things that aren't true. So it looks like all of the musicians are the same, but the vocalist is no longer Francesca. It looks like the vocal that they've got for this is Haley McDonald. So before anybody's on the chats down below saying, yes, I figured it out. It's Haley. And Haley's vocals on here just shine. Like, her ability to rap her both high ends and low ends almost together to blend them as one with This Is Just a Warning that then opens up, and it's this massive crescendo and blast of sound. It's heavy, it's dark, it's meaty. It's all things that I love about this band. And I also love that each of the tracks really do flow seamlessly into one another to give us about 42 minutes worth of unbridled and unstopped music. Because when we get there, it flows right into You've Got a Billion and I've Got a Half. And I love the ending piece of this where they repeat, got a billion, need a billion. And as they repeat it, it changes and changes until it ends with Total Oblivion. And I love that reworking and playing with the sounds and the lyrics in that case. I also love a lot of the different nonsensical lyrics on here. I've never seen Adam West dance, because if he did, he would be a bad man, a Batman, kind of along those lines, and I really enjoy that. But there's also a lot of very heartfelt and provocative lyrics, such as the third track for Hong Kong, saying Hong Kong was a industrial powerhouse until the opium came in. And, you know, kind of contextualizing that in that sense. And Hong Kong is a very short, quick, and punchy track. That then leads us into my favorite track off the entire album, which is I'm a Lasagna. And this is one that, even though it's a little bit of a nonsensical title, it just really blows me away. I love the playing styles. I love that even though this is a 4-minute track, it feels like it's a 10-minute epic, especially with the big play out. I love the soothing of, I'm a lasagna, you are the big cheese, and whatever is you is me. You know, like that, such a flow to it. Like, it's reminding me of some of the more soothing aspects from like Pink Floyd in their Metal album. Very soothing, very tangible, very viscous. And I love the big play out that we finally have on the end point on this. Like, they could have very easily taken the easy stop and then ended this album at like the 2-3 minute mark, but instead they push it out into a very easy 4 minutes. But in my mind, they could have stretched this way out. I love also that this album doesn't, or this track doesn't follow the conventional structure of a track, you know, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, verse kind of an idea, where really anything is up for games. They go into like the verse, into the chorus, into a bridge, into a chorus, into another bridge, into the finalized chorus that then brings us into the play out. And I'm just loving where that play out goes. Like, I find this is one of those moments where I just lose myself in it. And right from there, we go into Bring a Bun, which is a short, concise, much more of like an interlude. It's not quite as punchy or in your face, but it is a nice little breath of fresh air when you come from such a heavy hitter that is I'm a Lasagna, coming into Someone's After My Malted Milk. I mean, Someone's After My Malted Milk is such a powerhouse. Like, it's reminding me of some of those like really sludge core metal bands. Like, I'm thinking of like Mastodon or even Gojira, where it's this big meaty guitar work that's really leading this track through, that has these darker undertones that's kind of spacing everything around it. But even with that, it ends on such a somber and optimistic note. Like, it ends on this very heavenly thing. It's got a little bit of a driving drum work. It's very military in that sense, but the guitar work, where it's this picking style on the high end frip, it just sounds so angelic, which is such a strange kind of thing to say, where the track started in such a dark and heavy overtone. And then when we come into Space 8, the 7th track, and it does kind of the same thing that Someone's After My Malted Milk does, and starting off very juggy, very sludgy, but then ending on this very heavenly, ethereal plane, where it's very soothing, it's very hypnotic, it's almost like this space rock essence on it, and I love how it ends on such a beautiful note. And then we come into Heavy Hit, one of the smaller tracks on here. But even with the small runtime of just over about 2 minutes, it's able to pack in quite a bit. It's a little bit more raw on this one. It's a little bit more driving. It almost feels like a heavy metal version of a punk song in that sense. But I love the kind of midpoint and where the song grows and changes into. I love the synth work that's kind of laying it down. It's reminding me of some of the more retro prog outfits on there, where it's more of like a synth or a mellotron. And that same kind of heavy hitting drive is found within the next track of Rose Train. And I, again, much like all the other tracks, I love where this song goes in never wanting to sit still. You know, it's always moving, it's always changing. Every time you think that you're comfortable in the playing styles, they shift it a little bit from a heavy, chugging, more metally aspect to this. I'm almost thinking of like a some of those softer moments from Between the Buried and Me, like Ants of the Sky. I'm only saying that because I can see it right behind me, but I love those like switching of styles mid-track. And then the next two songs, I like how they bleed into one another. Let It Run and Mr. C's 2003. I like how Let It Run is really much more of a traditional track, and it's interesting that the traditional track is the one that kind of stands out at being one of its own. It feels very similar to Bring a Bun, and being a little bit of an interlude, a little bit of a almost like a cleansing of palate before we come into the heavy-hitting last two tracks. And Mr. C's 2003 does a great way of starting the ending pieces of this album. And again, much like it's using the energy that it had from Let It Run, it takes its time to really build itself up. Like half of the track of Mr. C's 2003's is just the build. It's the gradual build to a very satisfying kind of plateau. And again, it uses that momentum to go straight into the last track of Turkey 2000s that really ends the album off. And I feel like, I don't want to say they ran out of steam, but they don't end on a very crunchy, guttural, heavy metal, heavy side. They end more on a soothing, somber side, and I appreciate that. I really like how they are able to kind of tie everything up and kind of end everything, but I will admit that the last 3 tracks of Let It Run, Mr. C's 2003s, and Turkey 2000s aren't necessarily my favorite parts of the album. It does kind of end a little bit on a fade out rather than a kind of an explosion, which is really saying something when the album opened up with such a stellar, hard-hitting aspect. But I mean, overall, this whole album is a massive treat and a great delight. I really found myself digging and loving every minute of it. I can put this on and really find myself being moved by it. I love the transitions between tracks. Sometimes it feels like it's the same track that just hasn't quite stopped yet. I love the blending and shifting of genres in and between tracks. I think this is a great step up that they already had from their debut full-length album. I've been loving this one, and I think it is an album that the band should be proud of. I really think that they've knocked it out of the park once again. This definitely gets the note seal of approval. It's another run, don't walk recommendation for me to go and check it out. And yeah, I can say that Meet Mallet by A Formal Horse is one that I easily love with my whole heart. I can't recommend it more. I think it's a great effort. The only criticism, and this is more of a nitpick rather than anything else, is that it started off so heavy and hard-hitting and then ended on a little bit of a fade out rather than like a good explosion. Because once we get to Turkey 2000s, I don't really feel as though it's a perfect ending for this album. But that's the only nitpick that I have. All of these tracks and songs within it are fantastic and brilliant, and I highly recommend checking it out. So that's all I got for Meet Mallet from Formal Horse. What did you guys think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Give it a listen and let me know what your thoughts are by commenting down below. And if you like what you see and you want to help support me, consider donating to my Patreon. Left that link down below. Even $1 a month goes a long way. And yeah, check out my podcast, Quid Prog Quo. And that's all I've got. That's all I've got for this one. So thank you so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.